Okay, and hello everyone. Hello, and welcome to a warm welcome to today's live webinar hosted by the London School of Emerging Technology. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us all, and we'll be right with you. Whether you are an aspiring entrepreneur, an early stage founder, or just someone preparing to raise investment for your startup, today's session has been designed specifically for you. So today's topic is From Deck to Deal, the practical founder's journey from pitch presentation to investment. Because many founders spend weeks creating a pitch deck, but very few truly understand what investors expect after that first presentation. So today's webinar is all about bridging that gap and helping you understand the practical journey from building your pitch to securing investment. I'm then delighted and welcoming our guest speaker tonight, which is Daniel Helman. Daniel, nice to have you. Daniel has spent many years building and operating and advising technology startups across different industries. Throughout Daniel's entrepreneurial journey, he's worked closely with founders and investors, giving him the first-hand experience of what really happens during those fundraising events. Not just in theory, but in practice too. So Daniel, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. Over to you.
Thank you, Marco. Great to be here again with our community, and a really interesting topic. I think when fundraising, the deck takes such a front and center in terms of conversations, but often it's just a gateway to the fundraising, and I think it's a misunderstood part of fundraising that once the deck's complete, sometimes founders think, I've done it, or I've sent it, I've presented it, most of the work is done. But actually, that's where I say the real work starts. And today we'll go through the topic and explore a little bit what happens once you've prepared your deck and how you can move through that fundraising process smoothly. So yeah, let's kick on into slide 2.
Right, let's get started. I think what I'll do is I'll start with the bigger questions that we have out there. One that all founder questions eventually will come into, which is most people believe that fundraising, it begins and it ends with the pitch deck. So my question to you is, what actually happens once the presentation is ready?
Yeah, and I think preparing the presentation is obviously something you do as a founder with your team, or advisors, etc., or on your own, and it's an evolving deck. Deck should always be improved, added to, etc., as you get more feedback. But first and foremost, you need to look at it and say, does this tell my story well? Can I use it as my conversation? Can I share it with someone? And if they read it, will they be able to understand what I'm trying to build? And will it excite them and make them think, actually, I want to have another meeting? That's really the key. So it's not trying to tell the whole story, but it's almost like a teaser, I would say. And this is going back to one of our previous webinars where we spoke about less is more. Don't try and overload the deck. It's really a conversation starter and something that should get the investor excited about having more conversations, because investment is about conversations. It's not a one-time conversation, then a few emails back and forth, and then the deal's done. There are usually several follow-up conversations, which is what we'll talk about today.
That's right. Well, we're going to do everything today. So today's webinar is really following the entire journey you're going to go through, rather than just the beginning of that one stage. So I suppose let's start there. If you could tell me, maybe through the roadmap we're going to go and cover today.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, today we'll talk about a journey and what a fundraising process looks like, and of course the first is the idea in the pitch deck. This is where communication, simplicity, trying to convey what you're doing to sometimes a mass audience, because you're going to send it to lots of different potential investors, is super key. Most founders are very familiar with this stage. This is decks are part and parcel of their life. The second stage is where things become more interesting. You have to now identify who the investors are. And if we're talking specifically VC, the pot is made of really, I would say, 2 types. Generalists, who invests in a lot of different types of technologies. And then you have specialists, and the specialists typically stay in their lane. They know their field inside out. So you need to find sometimes a combination. of the generalists and the specialists who may be working in your area. And you have to research and find out not only who they are as companies, but who are the individuals that you want to reach out to. So this is very much a deeply thought through research. I always say it is a numbers game, fundraising, but it's better to be smart. In other words, contact the right types of investors, because there's nothing worse than contacting 10 investors, of which 9 have no interest or background or history of investing in your particular product or your particular industry. It's really a complete waste of time. And finding those investors is key, as I say. Now, once you've done that, due diligence, be prepared for it. This is what data rooms are for. It's to populate it with lots of information, usually spreadsheets, explainer documents, etc., about what you're trying to do. This is where investors can go in and really find out more and more information about your business. Because don't forget, if they're going to invest a pot of their money, they want to know more than just the deck. And this is where the deck is the starting point. But the due diligence and the nitty gritty, the devil is in the detail, is what follows next. And be prepared for difficult conversations. They will interrogate you, right? Not because they think you're wrong, but sometimes they want to hear your thoughts, your opinions on what they're challenging you. So this is really, really important. And that's where you move into term sheet. Term sheets usually have the first, I would say, real concrete signal that someone's going to invest in you. Of course, before that, you want to hear verbally, yes, we're interested in investing. Yes, we will put an offer forward. But the term sheet is where things become really, I would say, concrete. They are now putting something formal in front of you to say, here's the terms under which we're ready to invest. Okay? And of course, at the end of it is the investment in growth. They want to know what you're going to do with the money, how you're going to spend it, how you're going to grow and take your business to the next phase and help their investment grow.
That's right. That's what it's all about, ultimately.
Yes.
Wow, a lot to unpack. I suppose before we get into those, I wanted to see maybe if you could get into some practical examples today. For the people out there listening, is there anything you wanted to make clear? What are the takeaways? What are the big takes from today's webinar?
Yeah, and we'll go through some practical things, but I think the first thing is to come back into identifying the right investors. Okay. And as I said, don't treat this like a numbers game, even though you will have to speak probably to many investors before you get even a yes or a maybe. You have to be able to handle that rejection. So finding the right type of investors is a constant activity. Research, speaking to people in your field, introductions are always the best way. Of course, cold outreach can be difficult with VCs or investors because they get approached a lot. So sending your deck to the right people is ultra important. Sending it to random people is going to create very low traction, I would say. So that's the first thing I would say is really important. And the conversations that follow matter much more than the presentation or the deck itself. I personally, in fact, don't ever share my deck. I don't like to share my deck without a meeting first because I want to be able to communicate or explain my business and my passion for it before sending the deck. The deck can leave investors at their own behest to make judgment calls on what your business is like. I usually, before the deck, even send a one-pager, a teaser that says, come and have a call with me, and I'll share the deck after the call if I can. If I can.
Please do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that asking yourself, are you prepared to have the right deck, the right teaser, the right communication to approach the investor before they give you a meeting, and building a plan on what happens thereafter is really critical. Execution, this is where execution becomes important. Because as I said, the deck is just the starting point. After that, there are meetings. Meetings usually have feedback. They usually have also homework. People ask you questions you might have to follow up on. That's why it's really important to have almost a very, very solid, concrete action plan. That after the meeting, what am I going to do to keep this investor interested, lukewarm, and hopefully move them in a funnel from introduction to actual interest, right? And that's a really important part because a lot of founders, I would say, think that presenting and introducing the deck is the main thing. It's really not. It's the follow through of now someone's shown an interest, or maybe they haven't shown an interest, but they haven't said no. So I want to really see if they are interested. That follow up is critical. Post meeting actions, whether it's another meeting, whether it's sharing a demo, whether it's sharing more information they asked about, etc., etc. That's really important. And then that moves you into the due diligence. And a lot of founders do fail is a harsh word, do struggle at this stage because they're not prepared. So the investor is a momentum game. If they've shown an interest and they now want to see 10 documents to help them really understand your business, if they're ready, and all you can do is send them a link to your Dropbox or where your data room is and say, here you go, you're driving the momentum. You're not becoming a blocker. Whereas if you say, well, actually, I need a month to get them ready, I'll drip feed you with as and when they're ready, you're creating the barrier to them becoming excited about your business.
All right, I think that's brilliant. We speaking of feedback, you mentioned that because part of the overall journey is I wanted to move into some examples that we can have a look at today. And namely, I was going to go through two founders' journeys who appear very, very similar on the surface on first glance, but it'll be a good one to see which one of the two actually moves closer to that investment journey, like you said. And for that, then I'll put this on screen to get into maybe one of the most interesting parts of today's session, which on screen you can see Daniel, instead of just explaining the fundraisers through the theory, you've gone ahead and created a comparison between these two founders on the left and the right. And at first glance, two of them seem to be very similar on the face. And they look for the same sort of investment, but I wonder if you could talk about this and walk us through the scenario. What do you think about it?
Yeah, sure. And I think the thing to remember here is that investors see tens or hundreds pitch decks a week. So they see a lot of pitch decks and a lot of things that look similar. So for example, here, let's have a look at these two, right? Two pitch decks, both building an AI-powered HR platform. Something in the HR space, it's a big movement, right? They're both asking for $500,000. And you might think they're both identical, but there are, as an investor, very, very silo differences here, right? So founder A, as we can see, looks very impressive. 5-member founding team, beautifully designed pitch, which should be a given, by the way, with AI. Every pitch deck should be nicely designed and presentable. Bold projections about the future, confident, passionate. But when we ask questions about the business itself, there are only 10 pilot users, which is relatively few, depending on the stage of your business. There's no recurring revenue, so there's no actual revenue in the business just yet. And very little validation. So as much as the founder's excited and passionate, which is fantastic, I, as an investor, don't see validation from the end user, from the customer yet. And the fundraising strategy is based on sending the same pitch deck to hundreds of investors. So it's a little bit of spray and pray. Okay? The founder believes the idea is revolutionary, and the deck speaks for itself. So it's very bold, brash, confident, which is great, but it feels a little like it lacks some substance. Maybe the foundation isn't quite there. And the sentence in itself, my idea is revolutionary, tells a lot. Because as an investor, I see tens of hundreds of ideas, thousands every month. I've probably seen it all, as it were. Every idea might sound revolutionary, but I see it all the time, so maybe it's not revolutionary for me. So sometimes the presentation makes me think it's compensating for lack of evidence. Right? I'm already querying if a founder tells me this is revolutionary, there's only one of me, there's only one of my idea. Well, is there? Because it's a big world out there, and AI in HR is a big space. So I'm already starting to not get too excited about the oversell, I would say. Now, compared to founder B, spent months polishing animations, creating a visually, nice deck. They haven't spent that time. Sorry, they haven't. It's a bit more simple. It's a bit less polished, let's say. But they've focused on building the business. They have 120 paying customers. Big tick for me, right? Already there's validation that customers are using the technology and clearly liking it enough to pay. Generating £18,000 in monthly revenue. Some would say that's no great shakes. Yeah, but it's still £18,000. So it's still something to build on. They've got a financial model, right? Whilst not everyone is competent on finance, and we spoke about this in one of the other webinars, the numbers tell the story in a much more convincing way than sometimes we can, because it's data. It's a lot of it is proof points. It also shows me how the founder's thinking about the constant journey by seeing a spreadsheet go month to month. Their data room is organized. I said it before, the data room, once people get in there, if it's organized and simple to see the files that I want to look at, you're making my job as an investor easier. And instead of emailing lots and lots of different investors, they've built relationships, secured warm introductions. And their pitch deck is there to start the conversation. And the business closes the deal. In other words, my pitch deck is just my beginning of my story. By the time you learn about my business, you're going to be convinced. This is what the investors want to hear. Because fundraising isn't it's not X Factor competition. It's not see me in 30 seconds and be ready to invest in me. It's get interested, but actually show me you're credible. And credibility comes from paying customers. Credibility comes from showing expertise. Credibility comes from a thorough and an organized data room. It may sound boring, but that's what sells. When investors are thinking, I'm going to give you £500,000 or £1 million, they want to see something, somebody they can trust. They can think, I can rely on this person. And obviously, they're making that call on a few meetings. And also all this information is almost in their mind, constantly raising their trust bar. I trust you more and more the more I interact with you. Whereas the big brash comments, maybe followed with the little substance, drives me the other way, less confidence.
Yeah, well, so when you put this side by side, it absolutely does make sense. I think trust is the key thing, and especially today in our attention-driven economy, a lot of founders I talk to, they naturally assume that investors will choose the better-looking presentation. Like you said, there's no excuse not to, but in reality, it's anything but. We're looking for the evidence. We're looking for the actual nugget that the business is delivering, that value that's already solving that genuine problem.
Absolutely, and as I said, presentations. With AI, we can make them look presentable. I would say that a deck without any artwork and animation or any colors, with just simple bullets, but if it can explain the business in a clearer way than a very fancy presentation that doesn't quite explain the business, there's only one winner. Because I can tell you one thing, if your presentation, and we covered this in the last topic, if your deck doesn't translate very simply and quickly to the investor what problem you're solving, what solution are you giving, what's your traction, and what you want, very quickly, sometimes we say 30 seconds, if you can't get that, the investor's moving on to the next. They don't have time or desire to do the work for you by deep diving into your business before they understand it at a very superficial level. They have to understand it quickly and be excited about it.
Harsh but fair. But Daniel, I mean, aside from your artistic talent, I know we're here to talk about founders in general. You know, I actually went back to design this title, this slide, because it challenges something that almost every other founder will believe. And most people will think that building the pitch deck is where the fundraising itself begins. What do you think of this?
Yeah, as I said, it is a bit of a reality check, because your deck is one of the most important assets, but it's really the conversation starter. Okay. And it gets you to, I love pitch decks because it gets you to focus your ideas onto something fairly short format, 10 slides at most. But the substance behind it, in terms of what my business fundamentals are, what am I looking to build, and everything else that comes off the back of it, is what really sells your investment. The pitch deck doesn't create the business. It simply communicates the business. So that's where, as I referred to, have I clearly identified the problem I'm solving? I always say, if you don't identify the problem you're solving and convince me that that problem exists, it doesn't matter what you're showing me. You could tell me you have the most amazing AI algorithms, deep learning, all the jargon, and you're a PhD from all these places. If I don't trust or believe that you're solving the problem you think you're solving, or I don't understand what it is, doesn't matter what you're building. So you've got to get some of these fundamentals right. And if you do that, that's where the pitch deck doesn't have to be all singing, all dancing, beautiful, because the fundamentals of what you're saying will sell the business itself. So these are just some of the things that, and again, we've covered these in previous webinars, which are super important in conveying in that pitch deck and beyond. Right? And beyond. And that's where, again, the pitch deck might be 10, but you've got other supporting documents that might explain a lot more. Your technology may be a 3-page document that goes into lots of algorithms and tech flows and code. That's fantastic. Don't put that on the deck. Put it in a supporting document to impress and show people that you've got substance behind you.
Okay.
So these are all important things that help the reality check of what it is I'm trying to do to help fundraise. And the deck is just one part of that storytelling. It's not the business.
Right. Yeah. It's not the full thing. I mean, to me, it takes away like the pitch deck is a big thing. It's warlight. It's credibility sort of begins, but it's where your evidence will be put forward. It's where the credibility becomes visible. It's what you are able to show to your audience.
Absolutely. And I would say let's highlight one here, which is the bottom right. How much funding? I always find this is one of the most interesting questions. Mm-hmm. How much funding isn't just a number because you see other people raising a similar amount. This should be really thought through. There should be a really detailed answer as to why I'm raising $500,000. What am I specifically using the $500,000 for? What results do I expect once I deploy that $500,000? And even a spreadsheet that shows how that $500,000 will be used and what the business result will be. In other words, maybe I'm turning over, if we use founder B from the previous slide, 18,000 MRR is where I am today. At the end of deploying that $500,000, I want to be at 100,000 MRR. Right? And here, let me show you why I think I can get there. With a spreadsheet or with supporting documents. Maybe I'll hire people, maybe I'll build technology, etc., marketing. And as a result, over the next X number of months, I will turn the 18,000 MRR, monthly recurring revenue, into 100,000 MRR with your $500,000 investment. Convince me of that, then you've maybe hooked me in with the problem and solution. Shown me you've got traction, so I already have confidence you're able to get paying customers. And now you're explaining to me how you're going to grow the number of paying customers by 7x or whatever it might be.
Okay, well, let's take this for granted. Let's imagine that we've already done the work, we prepared the business properly. I suppose I might have come with another challenge to you, which is actually finding the investors themselves. And that sounds like the most straightforward thing to do, but I know from speaking to other founders that actually finding the investors is often where things get kind of rough. Okay, a lot of fundraising efforts begin to lose momentum around this area.
Yeah, and I think we've spoken about this. This is where people don't always like doing the research, but it's critical. You're going to spend a lot of time doing outreach or trying to get into the network of people that are in the investment game. You've got to focus your attention on the right ones. Mm-hmm. They get approached all the time, so their attention span and time is limited. Do not make this a mass activity. It has to be researched, personalized. It has to be very direct and very specific and tantalized for them to like it. People use LinkedIn, emails, phone calls if you can get the numbers, Twitter, right, or X. All these methods are ways to reach out to the investor, because the one thing that is true about investors, they're generally active on social media somewhere. Find where they are and go and speak to them. And of course, the best way of reaching the investors is via introductions. There's nothing stronger than an introduction to your potential investor. That gets you to the front of the queue rather than number 200 that's trying to contact me in the last week to send me their deck or send me their one pager. So this is a constant ongoing, I would say, personalization. Be prepared for lots of ghosting, lack of replies. They're busy people. Don't take it personally. Move on to the next, but be consistent and really work on reaching out, because if you've done your research and your personalization, it will pay off handsomely when the right ones actually give you the time of day. If it's the right sector for them and you're the right type of technology, they will want to speak to you. It's their job to speak to lots of founders. You just have to make sure you speak to the right ones.
Yeah, well said. Consistency is key. That's the really important thing. It's the quality over the quantity itself.
100%. Yeah, which is difficult because you get lots of rejections or you get lots of ghosting, so you feel like you have to just spray more. It's okay to spray more and reach more, but make sure you're doing that research. Make sure you're doing that personalization, and don't get too discouraged and just send generic stuff, because on the most it won't work.
All right. Well, keep it in mind. So let's imagine then, if we have our first investment coming through, let's imagine that someone actually does come out and reply back. Let's imagine our meeting. Apologies. Yeah, so in terms of first meetings, something's going to get scheduled. Now, I would say this is maybe the hardest thing of all to do, but any thoughts on this? The first meeting.
Yeah, the first meeting is to me one of the most exciting bits. You get the opportunity to present what your business is all about. But I will always say, remember, this should be a dialogue. It shouldn't be just you presenting, you talking continuously. But yeah, let's compare. You know, we've got Founder A. The slides look great, very visually stimulating, which sometimes can be a problem, by the way. Too much stimulation visually loses my focus. But let's say, you know, great looking pitch deck, but the meeting turns into just a one-way dialogue. So the founder's just reading what's on the page. Answers are pretty much rehearsed, robotic. Unexpected questions create hesitation, maybe a sign of panic. And the founder's always speaking rather than listening or asking questions to see what the investor thinks. This is very important. Asking questions should be a key part of that first meeting. Because not just for relationship building, but if you're speaking to the right investor, they will know a lot about the space you're building in. So now you can actually get a value from the investor. Even if they don't invest in you, you can learn from that investor. So you should be asking them questions. But of course, we've got Founder B in the same room, right? And same investor, same amount of time spent with them, but it's a different conversation. Founder opens with a short story. We spoke about storytelling. Storytelling is a huge part of fundraising, especially in the early stages where there's very little history or financial traction. He uses customer examples, right? So there's nothing stronger than customer A told me this about my product. Customer B has come back to us 4 times in the last month. Speaks with data, right? Investors love data because data is concrete. And they welcome questions. So they're open to it. They might invite questions. What do you think about my hypothesis of my business growth? Do you think it's realistic for me to grow 7x in a year if I do this, this, and this? So the discussion feels much more two-way. The founder isn't scared of questions. He's inviting them. And it feels natural. It doesn't feel rehearsed. And the investor relationship is starting to build. And by getting follow-up meetings, it's where the investors can actually start deep diving. Because again, the first meeting is really just the introduction. It's not that, you know, this isn't that X factor. I've got half a minute to sing my song, and if it's brilliant, I'm going to get a deal. It's let me get enough of a conversation, of a relationship building start to get a second meeting. That's essentially all you want. The first meetings, they're just there to get the second meeting. So you can see how two different styles, two different founders, but one will probably get a much more natural relationship style conversation that is likely to stand them in good stead and hopefully get them to a second meeting. And of course, due diligence is the next phase. And I think our next slide starts talking about this, and it's super important. I can't emphasize it enough. It sounds boring, but this is where deals are lost and won.
Right, like you said,
sorry,
it's like a good date almost. You know, a date is like getting a second date almost. I wanted to to jump on this because your experiences with preparing the business, actually finding the right investors and making the strong first impression during that first initial meeting, which is the most terrifying thing. But the next stage, after the first meetup, that of due diligence, like you say, is something that a lot of first timers don't fully appreciate and can't quite get a grasp on. What actually happens then during the due diligence? What is that all about?
Yeah, when an investor says we want to move into due diligence, founders should celebrate. You've almost, getting the meeting is hard enough. Getting interest to move to due diligence is also challenging. So this is a celebratory moment. But this is where I say be prepared. This is when they want to start stress testing some of the things you've discussed about, validating some of the things you've discussed about, and give themselves more confidence to push from a maybe I'm positive on this business to I want to make an offer, I want to give you a term sheet. And this is why so many things are lost and won in this stage, because you've so far sold them something. Now they're going to really deep dive. And it's not about them trying to prove you wrong or trying to find mistakes. It's about them looking at things like the business plan, right? What is your plan? What's it based on? You told me you have 120 customers. Fantastic. But show me more things around customers, your research that got you to those customers. How are you going to grow your customer list? If you have some very notable brands or customers or logos, show me who those are. And then show me how you're going to grow them. So talk to me about how you plan to go from 120 to 1,000 customers. Financial statements. Very, very important. I want to see a revenue model. I want to see something that tells me that you can grow, but how are your costs going to grow? How are your overheads going to grow? Because surely you can't just grow 10x in a year without adding some costs to the business. So I want to see a reality check on what those things look like. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's often wrong. I know as an investor, most of what I'm looking at in a year, I'll look back and go, well, that was wrong. That was incorrect. But it's your projections. It's your hypotheses. And I want to see that there's a logic to how you've come up to these financial numbers. Legal. Do you have copyright or IP? Right? If you've told me you have, show it to me. It's a great way to earn trust. If you haven't, no problem. Maybe you don't need to have it. Show me you've registered the company. Show me some things around bank accounts to show me that you're more than just an idea. There's lots of ways of showing traction, even without the business having traded for a long time. Product. Again, you might have sold me a product on a one-liner. Great. Show me a little bit more. Show me some Figma designs. Show me a demo video. These things can be created in minutes using AI. So there's no reason not to show me what the product looks like or may look like. Show me a product roadmap. If you want me to invest for the next year, show me what the product's going to look like throughout the next year. Don't tell me I haven't thought of it. I'm going to think of it once I get the investment. That's a terrible signal. You've got to be prepared as if you've already raised the money. As soon as I give you the money, I want you to be ready to run with it and deploy it. So you've got to have this mindset of, I'm raising, I will raise, I'm going to have all these things lined up. So this is the due diligence. They're going to really ask some challenging questions. If you're missing things, make sure you can get them ready quickly for the investor. You won't always have all the documents, maybe, but you need to react quickly to not lose momentum. Team, the last one here, actually, the team is often the most important part of the fundraising for the first couple of rounds. The idea, the technology, all of that change, but the team doesn't. So put your team front and center. Tell them who the team is, bios, LinkedIn profiles, invite them to book calls with the team. Maybe do a short video introducing the team. All of these things to make them feel like they know who you are, who the team is, add credibility, and show that you're very transparent. Okay? Whereas the deck, less is more. Here is where you need to beef it up. Because the more you show, the more they can look at, the more they can interrogate, the more they can get confidence that you're a credible person to back. And this is all about the data.
The golden rule, show and don't tell. Absolutely. Because a lot of the people will just say it's all about the paperwork, it's all about what's on page, but it really is all about confidence building. That's what it all boils down to. The confidence at the end of it all.
Yeah, exactly. And a very clear, organized data room with 30 documents, nicely organized, well titled, so it's easy for me as an investor to go in and navigate and find the documents, is a huge confidence booster. So sounds boring, but super important for this stage.
I love to hear it. So let me put something in front of you, because here comes a good part. Here's a fun one. Daniel has put us in a position of a investment committee. So here on screen, you can see you've got £1 million available to you. Go crazy to invest. But of the 3 in front of you, you can only choose 1. Now, Daniel, my reasoning is, I'm not too sure. So if perhaps you can walk me through it. Talk me through startups. What would you look at? What goes through your mind as you see startup A, founder A, and founder A?
Yeah, so I think ignore some of the titles there, but investment committees, just to explain, is where your investor will go to his colleagues, peers, bosses, his company. All of the different investment managers will put together businesses they want to back. Usually these happen every month. And there might be 10 deals that the investment committee looks at, but they can only back 4. So this is where you being able to arm your investor with the right information to go and pitch your business to other people is the next part. So going to an investment committee is, again, a huge milestone. It means the person you're speaking to, the investor, has got enough confidence to go and pitch you to their colleagues and their bosses. And that's what happens in the investment committee. And hopefully they decide that your business will be one of the ones they want to write a term sheet for. And again, we've got 3 different types of businesses. You can see here, different types of MRR, different types of traction, but they've all got early stage revenue, which is great. And you can see lots of different things here, right? On the left, you've got month-on-month growth, customer retention is very strong, a team of 6, right, which is quite small. And by the way, small means good. If you're 40,000 MRR, you shouldn't have a team of 50 people. So that's good. And you can see what you're being asked for: 800,000 at 12 million valuation, 500,000 at 5 million, 2 million at 20 million. So this gives you an idea of what the investment committee will look like. And there's no right or wrong answer on which one you might invest in. But it's important for the founder to realize this is what happens when you go into that investment committee. You're no longer being compared to your competitors in your field. You're just being compared to other startups that are raising money. And how does your startup compare to these from a business idea, growth idea, but also valuation? If you value yourself too high, in the investment committee, they might say, do you know what? We don't want to invest 800 grand at a 12 million valuation. We believe business B in the middle, that's asking for 500,000 at a 5 million valuation, gives us a better opportunity to turn our investment into a big win. So this is super interesting because it just shows you the type of things you're being compared to. And what's important here is you can't often affect these things. You don't know who you're going to be compared to. You don't know what other businesses will be there at the investment committee. But this is why it's super important to put a very strong case for your own business forward. And this is why getting to investment committee is fantastic, but it's not quite the end game yet. You haven't sealed the deal just yet. And the beauty is the investor has to make a decision. They have to invest in one or two of these businesses, often not three. If they've only got $1 million, they won't spread it thinly. They might say, we want to go for two of these or even only one. So this is why these case studies are interesting. And as I said, there is no right or wrong answer. It's impossible for me to give an answer because I don't really know about the businesses and I don't know what markets they're going into. I don't know the growth opportunity. And again, I haven't been in the meetings, so I don't know whether business A has a certain type of founder mentality and character that I like versus business B that maybe is the person I trust less for some reason. So these are interesting things to consider of what your investor is going to go forward when they go to the investment committee, which, as I said, is a huge milestone, but you're not quite there to get the offer.
Mm-hmm. It's such a positive spin on things too, because a lot of founders will think that straight away the rejection, which nobody likes, is a bit of a sting, will mean the business is no good. But rejection just means that the investors looking at this simply might have their minds elsewhere. They might have a different investment strategy. It might just not be the right fit.
Yeah, correct. It's all about being the right fit and sometimes the right timing. Rejection is part of the game. Rejection should be used as a learning tool. If you get rejected, you want to understand why. Investors aren't always great at giving you that very transparent, honest feedback. So you sometimes get a hunch as to why you've been rejected, or you feel that you're always getting rejected in due diligence. Then you know your due diligence documents aren't thorough enough, maybe. So there's different ways of evaluating rejection, but always take it as a learning, because the game of raising money for 99% of people that raise money involves a lot of rejection.
Well said. Well said. In fact, I'm going to take you somewhere to here, because I think it'll be a nice venue for us to discuss this kind of conversation now. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on this, Daniel. Can you maybe walk me through some of these questions, the typical questions, and why they are why they're so important?
Yeah, and you know, you could look at the most common questions investors ask, but the truth is, investors are human beings. They have their own likes, dislikes, what they prioritize, etc. When you get into the deeper conversations, which may be in the first meeting or maybe in meeting 2 or 3, they're going to ask you some questions, and on the whole, you should be prepared to give them an honest response. As I said, you're being asked for £500,000. Let's go as the first one. Usually, one of the key questions is, tell me what you're going to do with it. And you need to be able to explain to me in a very quick matter, half a minute. But this is a really good question. What's the biggest risk to your business today? Investors will often know what the biggest risks are generally to startups, whether it's around traction, getting early customers, whether it's around ChatGPT destroying your business, right? We've learned a lot about how Claude X comes out with something new and suddenly a whole section of startups, their value just disappears because suddenly it's a free on one of the large LLMs. So they want you to think of an answer, be able to iterate an answer here, not because you know what the biggest risk and you're 100% convinced of it, but they want to know that you've thought that way. Because if you have thought about what the biggest risk for your business is, you'll then hopefully try and mitigate that risk. So they ask you a lot of leading questions to see how your thought processes go. Another really good one. If you don't raise this round, what happens? The reality is most people won't raise this round. So they want to hear that you have a plan of how the business will continue to survive, grow. They want to hear, and this is a very, I like this question because it makes people feel vulnerable. Yes, you're here, you're all bullish, you're raising money, we're all fantastic. What if you don't raise money? How will you deal with that? So it's a great question, again, to see the personality and the character of the founder, but also to see actually what will they do, right? And this is where a desperate answer doesn't really tick the box for the investors. They don't like desperation. So they don't like, oh, if I don't raise this money, I've got 3 months left and then I'm done. That doesn't fill them with confidence. It sounds a bit too risky. Because what if I give you $500,000 in a year's time? Are you going to be so desperate again? Is it going to be such a high risk for me? So they like to see calm, cool, calculated thought processes and reactions. Right? And then the last one, why should I invest in your company instead of another startup? I don't like this question. It's a bit like, hey, come and show off about yourself. And if you've done a good pitch and a good conversation, I find sometimes this question is a bit of a, I want to ask a question. I'm the investor. I want to ask a question. This is what I'm going to ask. But I don't think you get much value out of this, because if you're having to ask this, maybe I haven't convinced you already that you want to have a follow-up call. So yeah, I don't like questions that kind of tantalize for founders to really show off, but have an answer ready. Be able to comfortably big yourself up without sounding overly, I would say, bullish, but they expect confidence. They expect you to say, "Yep, I do deserve this money because I'm going to do A, B, and C, and I'm going to turn this into a successful investment for you."
Good. I mean, I know, having watched my own fair share of Dragon's Den, that it's not just about the the memory. There's someone behind there. Like you said, the confidence is all that matters. The testing the judgment behind the people. It's a real strength of the character behind that business too.
And one more thing I would add, that asking questions back is one of the best ways for them to build respect and trust. If the questions are good, people like being asked questions, so it's good for relationship building. But more importantly, number one, you'll learn something hopefully from a good question and a good answer, and it lets you as the founder suddenly control the conversation a bit more. So I always found that if a meeting goes pretty quickly and you've now got another 15 minutes left, don't leave it 15 minutes of idle chat. Don't let them ask all the questions. Turn it on its head. Ask them why they would be a good investor for your business in your industry. What do they think of AI in HR, and where do they see it going, etc., etc. So there's always have these batch of questions ready and armed to go, because during that meeting they are very powerful to help the conversation along, get you to learn, but also get you to suddenly have a bit more of a, I would say, equal footing for the conversation, rather than feel like you're just constantly being interrogated, which can be tricky, can be difficult, can be overwhelming. Turn it on its head.
Turn it on its head. Well, wonderful. I mean, certainly we have turned a lot on today's discussion from the beginning, from building the business up to all the way through to building the pitch deck. We talked a lot about the actual investment finding and how they tend to go in terms of meetings. And gosh, due diligence, even sitting on the investment committee, is really useful seeing those things side by side. But Daniel, before we open the floor, I suppose my question to you would be, is there anything that you would like to put out on everyone? Is there any words of wisdom that you would like anyone to reflect on?
I don't think words of wisdom. I think it's just letting people get clarity that the deck is the starting point and the conversation is the meaty bit that will decide whether you get investment or not. The deck doesn't decide if you get investment or not. It may decide if you get the first meeting or not. And it may decide whether you get the second meeting, but it doesn't decide whether you get the investment. And I think that's just important for people to realize. The boring bit of the due diligence is super, super, super critical. But as always, the fundraising game is challenging. And I think it's making sure that you're fully prepared throughout the process, from that initial outreach to having materials ready with like the deck, the one page of the video of the demo, etc., and then being ready for the meetings. And again, for first timers, yes, meetings are daunting. But guess what? The more you have of them, the better you'll feel, the better you'll be prepared, the more you'll learn. And from the founders of Airbnb to Canva to some of the biggest names out there, they got rejected hundreds of times before anyone said yes. Right? So you're in a similar boat. You're in good company. And just remember that and stay positive, because It's not often you message 10 people, have 5 meetings, and you get term sheets from everyone. That doesn't often happen.
Well, punchy stuff. I think then, Daniel, we're gonna take those things together, and a big thank you really for those takeaways. They are words of wisdom, but I thought you'd have a bit more to say about some questions that have just coming through the audience, that I've just seen them show up on screen here. So allow me just to put them up on screen, as the wonderful audience members have been asking these things, and are dying to hear your thoughts on them, that they might come through. So one question that has come up a lot was, I guess, asking, when should a founder start? When does it begin? When do they start raising the investment itself?
I think it always works backwards from when you think you'll need the money. So if you think you're going to need the money, and by the way, fundraising processes take typically 6 to 12 months, right? So if you're 12 months from needing the money, you start that now. Doesn't mean you're going to maybe go all guns blazing now, but you may want to start developing your relationships and your outbound with investors, building that initial community of investors that you have access to is super important and can take months. So start finding those people now, start reaching out to them now. You're maybe not in fundraising mode, but you're certainly letting them know about your business, who you are, and that at some point soon you'll be ready to start fundraising. But always work it backwards from when you'll need the money. And bear in mind, fundraising does take 6 to 12 months. It's not as quick as you sometimes read in the big headlines on social media.
Well, it's good to have a timeline on this. Another question that is on people's lips is, going back to the pitch deck, in fact, they're asking, well, is the pitch deck enough? Is a really good pitch deck enough to secure the funding? I think you've talked
As I said, absolutely not. A good pitch deck may get you a first meeting and help you get a second meeting, but it's nowhere near enough. You have to be ready with supporting documents, data rooms, lots of other things that investors may ask, or that you may want to show them and present to them. The deck is just a starting point.
Got it. Another one that's come through is actually, funny enough, asking about the investor. So they're asking, how do I know if the investor is a right fit for my startup?
I think usually so deep research. What industry am I in? So let's say, go back to before, I'm in HR. Okay, I'm one of the businesses. I'm working in HR, and who's my company? It's B2B. So I'm doing B2B HR, and I'm using AI. Okay, which are the investors that play in these fields? And usually it's a combination. There'll be some generalist investors that invest in lots of different types of B2B businesses. Sometimes they'll be specialists. We only deal in HR. So go and find them. Go and see about what's on their website, what's on the blogs, podcasts, all these wonderful things. If you have a network, go and ask the network. Hey guys, who's good to raise investment from? Looking at your competition and seeing who they raised investment from may help. It doesn't mean that those same investors will invest in you, but you might find who their peers are. So lots of research helps you find the right types of companies and individuals that will be a good fit for you.
It all helps. Here's one that I am actually very interested in too. So another question has come up, and they're asking this time more sensitively, well, what if I don't even have the revenue? What if I don't have that yet? Can I still go ahead and raise funding if I don't have the revenue?
Yes, but less so nowadays. With the advent of low code, no code, AI, it's much easier to get businesses off the ground. And one of the, I would say, the bar for actually what traction looks like when you first raise is getting higher and higher. People want to see an initial product. People want to see paying customers. But there are instances where the technology you're building might require a certain level of funding to get started. And therefore, there's a good reason why you might not have initial funding. If you can explain that, or initial revenue, sorry, if you can explain that, and again, speaking to the right investors, by the way, will respect and understand a business that doesn't have revenue. But again, if you go onto the VC's website, often they say, we might we might invest in companies that have a minimum of $1 million annual revenue. Well, if you have no revenue, don't waste your time trying to reach to that VC, because you're not the right fit for them. But I would say more and more nowadays, people are looking for ready traction, which may only be a little bit of revenue, but certainly some revenue to start with.
It all helps. Daniel, I have another question for you, which is, how long is a piece of string? The question's asked, how much should I ask for during my first funding round?
Very difficult to answer as a from the get-go. But as I said, one of the key questions is, where is my business today? Where do I want it to be in 2 years? And what do I need money-wise to get there? Because the fundraising shouldn't really be based on what do I want my valuation to be? How many millions? Or, oh, I saw someone raising $1 million, I want to raise $1 million. It should be on results. Where do I want to get to? And what do I need that money for now? And this comes part of the first question I always really think is valuable in an investor meeting, is when an investor says to you, what are you going to use the money for? How much do you need, and what are you going to use the money for? So this is where I would say, start there. Rationalize in your own plans how much money you need in order to get you to the next milestone of the business 2 years down the line, for example, and start there. If it's $500,000, it's $500,000. If it's $1 million, it's $1 million. Or it could be a lot less. And I think that's where that becomes a good starting point to your fundraising thesis. Why you want the money, what you're going to use it for, and where is it going to take you in 2 years' time, and what does that mean to the investor, who hopefully will back you at for example, $1 million valuation. But if you deliver the results you think you will, the valuation will be 5 million in 2 years, for example, and that shows them the growth in their investment. You're back, Marco. I can see you.
I'm back. Sorry, there was a. I don't know where I went, but I didn't move anywhere.
No problem.
Back, Daniel.
I carried on, so hopefully the audience carried on listening to my answer.
Well, there's one last question. If I'm not sure if you answered, but it was the one that I think everyone's probably thinking about, which is what could I do wrong? What's the biggest mistake founders might do during those first investment meetings? What's most likely to go wrong?
I think it's talking too much and forgetting this is a two-way dialogue and conversation. It shouldn't be like a lecture. I'm lecturing you, and I'm here to just blurt lots of information out for you to hopefully go, I like that, it sounds interesting. It should be a bit like going for a coffee, where we're having a chat. And that's where the informality of it can sometimes produce a better result. Having a two-way dialogue, a relaxed conversation, is much better than having a very formal one-way dialogue. So I think that's where it's critical. Don't talk too much, and make sure your audience is engaged. Welcome them to give feedback. Ask them questions. Make sure they understand what you're talking about, and hopefully create this space where you're both having a very, very natural conversation. It should feel quite natural pretty quickly in order to have a successful first meeting.
Well said. Well said. And just while we're waiting for a few more questions, apologies, my slide wasn't on the right one, but I wanted to just bring to your attention, for those leaders amongst you, for the founders amongst us who want that continued support beyond just what's available today, there is a link for you to sign up and a QR code for you to scan in order to take you to an opportunity beyond. So I'll round up today's session with again another discussion about what we've done. We've moved from the pitch deck. We've talked about the investment, but no one does this alone. From every successful startup benefits from the mentorship, from the learning. We've talked an awful lot about collaboration and the strong the system that binds us all together. That is exactly what the LSET Startup Incubator scan here aims to provide you. So speaking to yourselves, if you are either an AI-driven startup or planning to start one, I would encourage you to explore the program and scan right now, because you're going to find the QR code and website on your screen for you to go and check out. So go ahead and take a picture, visit the page after today's session. We'll likely send you an email as well to learn much more about how LSET will support the founders throughout your entire journey. Remember that learning doesn't end when today's webinar ends. Okay, it's just the beginning. In which case, I'm going to round off as we come today's session with an end. I would like to sincerely, with a lot of applause, thank Daniel for sharing such an amazing insight and a lot of fundraising experience, a lot of wisdom with us today. So Daniel, thank you so much for taking the time to guide us through your complete journey from the founder's journey, all the way from a pitch deck to preparing for that investment. Thank you very much, Daniel.
My pleasure. Great to be here with everyone.
So, a pleasure to all. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you've enjoyed the webinar, do follow the LSET on social media channels and keep an eye out for the upcoming founder sessions, I believe on 7th. So workshops and masterclasses around the corner. For that then, have a wonderful day all. Stay connected.